TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. This is Up for a Chat with Cindy O'Meara, Karen Smith, and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Karen Smith.
I'm Kim Morrison.
And I'm Cindy O'Meara.
And we are technologically challenged. Oh my goodness. So if everybody could see what was going on behind the scenes today, they would have a little giggle at us, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. Look, even I'm giggling at the moment.
Let's just say there's been Skype issues and we've just adapted. So say no more. Carry on.
And it's a wonderful thing. Adapt and overcome. Adapt and overcome. There we go.
And improvise. Adapt, improvise, overcome. I got it.
Well, do you know, I'm not surprised actually that you two have been able to be so creative and magnificent with this, because you've both been on fabulous little holidays. So you're very refreshed and had a fabulous, fabulous time.
Yeah, we have. Well, we've both been in New Zealand, but not together. We didn't even see each other in New Zealand. Kim went with her family, but I went with my dad, and I did a beautiful trip down memory lane with my dad. He was born in Kaikoura, New Zealand, so we landed in Christchurch, drove up to Kaikoura through the most amazing country, breathless beaches, it's just, I love New Zealand.
It's a beautiful country.
It is just a stunning country, and we did a trip down memory lane. He's related to everybody in Kaikoura, I've decided, and everybody in the cemetery. And everybody in the cemetery, which was hilarious. Oh, yes, I went to school with him. Oh, yes, he's my aunt, or she's my aunt, or he's my uncle, or this is, oh, gosh, it was hilarious. And then we just visited people along the route to Auckland, and then we went to my dad's sister's 90th birthday, who is not feeble and in a wheelchair or an old people's home, but rather is doing amazing things with her artwork and her life, and very, very independent.
Isn't that fabulous? Well, you've got that to look forward to, love.
Yeah, I do have, like really old hair. Like my grandmother was 95. On Dad's side, they lived to ripe old ages. So yes, I do have something to look forward to there. What about you, Kim? What did you do?
Awesome.
We had a beautiful, we were the Griswolds. We had a camper van and took our time coming up the whole of the country. It was just so stunning and such a beautiful way to connect back in where we're from and show the children, they haven't been there since they were really little, and just an absolute treat and honour to really experience my country and connect back in again. So I missed you both dearly, but I had I don't think I'd say it was a relaxing holiday, because we travelled the whole length of the country in 14 days, and then my sister's wedding was at the end. So, it was pretty precious to really connect in with my family and just be on home soil.
Oh, how wonderful. Those are the sorts of times that money just can't buy, and for kids it's what creates memories, and it's just those are beautiful, beautiful times.
Yeah, it really is, darling. And you, like you say, you can't put money on it, and you start connecting back, and I thought, with today's topic, we've been getting a lot of questions about this lately, and it really made me reflect on my childhood and my upbringing, and just seeing where we came from, and how clean and green New Zealand is, and what a privilege it is to have grown up in such an amazing country, really. So, and Australia I put in the same category. We are so blessed. So yeah, it was really beautiful to think about my upbringing, and I thought a lot about Cindy's, and how, it really does shape who we are, the choices we make, the philosophies we want to instill with our children, and then the timing of the question on our Facebook page was, around the whole thing around drugs, the pill, what's our thoughts around it. And I thought, gosh, it's interesting, isn't it? Depending on how we were brought up, and then how our parents were brought up, is probably how we all are led to believe what is right or wrong. And then perhaps when we start questioning it, it then starts to create the question is do I believe in what our parents and grandparents did, or do I want to start a new philosophy?
So tell us about what the question was so that everybody knows what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, it was exactly that, around drugs, around medications, around the pill, around what our beliefs are, around whether or not we should be using them, whether or not we think the pill is a good thing. And it really did raise the question. And it was interesting, like I said, it came up for me in New Zealand, just thinking about it. And I guess from my point of view, my mum had me very young and she had me in the late 60s. Now, I truly believe her parents were brought up into the philosophy that doctors knew everything. Doctors were God, and they really were seen as quite incredible individuals. And I'm not saying they weren't, but when I look at what they were, if the doctor said something, everybody believed it or everybody agreed with it. And through their generation, my parents' generation, is what I believe is what happened when the real drug revolution started occurring, and that pills could fix all manner of things, and vaccination was very big, and it was just, and like if I look at how I was brought up, it's not that my mother was by any means a pill popper, not at all. It was more about, oh my gosh, you've got a headache. Well, there's this amazing thing called a Panadol that you can use, and Disprin and aspirin was very big when I was young, and I didn't have a belief around whether drugs were right or wrong. It was just that, ironically, it helped fix a headache when you were sick, or that the pill was actually a big thing around fixing people or women that had heavy periods. So it was seen as a way of controlling periods and hormones as opposed to just a contraceptive, and that seemed quite revolutionary.
Well, it was revolutionary in that it gave also females freedom. Whereas before, there was no freedom as far as our sexual liberation went, because it was either you get married and get pregnant, or you're on the pills. So, but I just want to go back a little bit. Let's just go back in the history of medicine, and not political medicine, but why has it taken such a big hold on our lives? And I do know that there was a whole history behind this. And there was a group of chemical companies who gathered together after the war, and it was to do with a group of companies, and they called themselves IG Farben. And IG Farben, along with Rockefeller, was looking for a way to endorse their drugs, endorse their chemicals. And I may have the wrong years here, so don't take this as fact, but I know that the story goes by this way. So they were looking for a way to dispatch their drugs or their medications. And they figured that the medical profession was a way to do it. But the medical profession at that point, or medicine at that point, was bloodletting. There was some pretty funny things that were happening, and the education wasn't that good. So through philanthropy, but a philanthropy where they would make money on it, they started to fund the medical schools and get some organization in the medical schools and some good education in the medical school, but along with their product. So that was the history of how medicine became the art of business, basically, was through IG Farben and the Rockefeller Foundation. And what I'm finding really interesting at the moment is that, I've created this nutrition course, and I think that this nutrition course, because it's based on vitalism and cultural anthropology, would be good for chiropractic schools. Mm-hmm. And I've just found out that vitamin and mineral companies are throwing hundreds of $1,000s to chiropractic schools to educate on nutrition and, of course, on the supplementation of nutrients, which to me, I'm sorry, but it's the same thing as what medicine did, in the beginning of last century, in finding a profession that would then dispense their medications, versus now we have a profession that they're looking at that is very much vitalistic and natural, that basically is doing the same thing. It's the same paradigm.
It's an interesting topic that you brought up there, Cindy, because I know that we've spoken about this before when it comes to supplements. how, it's just a different way, but it's still a prescription. It's still an allopathic way of treating humans. But what fascinates me is the way that these people actually get their products to market, as you say, is by actually funding the different associations and bodies and boards, and actually paying them to distribute their goods. I mean, if we paid people to distribute our goods, I'm sure everybody would be happy to push what we've got.
Yeah, definitely. And, if we look back years and years ago, where, herbs and spices and things like that were used for health. And yes, people died and we weren't that good. But I think medicine has entered into a domain where the belief is that they can heal all, but they're not healing. They're merely diagnosing and then giving a drug. And then we, in this false sense of security, believing that this is the way it should be, that we should be just get rid of the symptom. But remember, the symptom is to tell you that there's something wrong. By getting rid of the symptom, it's like getting rid of the red light that's on our dashboard. And if we get rid of the red light that's on our dashboard, the car will break down. And that's what's happening to the human body. And, my dad was a pharmacist back in the 50s. And I'm sure I've told this story before, but let's repeat it because we're talking about medications. So he was a pharmacist back in the 50s, and he saw what was happening and then found chiropractic. And chiropractic is very much based on vitalism, which is we look at the whole body. We just don't look at the symptoms. And as a result, he went to chiropractic college. We were all born, and he chose never to give us medications. And, so I am 55 this year and I've never had a medication. And that's how I brought my children up too. I brought them up with the belief that a Panadol is scary and dangerous. So, they're there for a reason, and use them in an emergency, but don't especially use them for just like lollies. And I know 16-year-olds that are using them as lollies, believing that they're inert, but just getting rid of pain, that they're not a problem. And then the pill is just, this is what is so scary, is that we have so many infertile couples and so many women, young women, that have been put on the pill, usually for skin problems. I don't know why they don't put the boys on the pill for skin problems. Mm-hmm. Seriously, they put the girls on, but then they put the boys on Roaccutane and the girls on Roaccutane. So we're giving these dangerous drugs with dangerous consequences for something we should be looking at other causes for it. And I think we have to be really, really careful when we're advising our young girls and our young boys as to what medications we can use.
I think something I want to bring up, and you both might agree or not agree, but I really do believe that a lot of what has happened is we're a little, well, maybe not even a little, but there's a lot of responsibility back on the consumer, and we blame the doctors, or we're blaming pharmaceutical companies. But the reality is, someone's got a headache. They would much rather take a pill and know that in 20 minutes they're going to feel better, or think that they're going to feel better, than actually realize that they need to lie down for half an hour. They maybe need to hydrate themselves. Maybe they drank a bit too much alcohol the night before, so therefore they've got to really appreciate the consequences. And I think, without blaming pharmaceutical companies and doctors and everybody, I think the consumer, we as the public who want to get rid of things quickly, and we don't want to have to deal with doing tinctures and inhalations and taking a bath and a massage and
taking time out.
Taking time out, which is usually 90% of illness is caused through stress. And so most diseases are stress related. They're stress related because we're full on and we're busy and we don't have time or money to take time out. But therefore we go to the doctor saying, can you fix me? And we want it done. And we've got the promise of something that's going to take it away within 20 minutes or perhaps a week or whatever it is, that the drug or the medication. And, I think it's a two-way street. I really don't think we can blame everybody. And then all of a sudden the pharmaceutical companies and the GPs, maybe the pharmaceutical companies first, saw that this was a business opportunity because the demand is there. And then the vehicle, the distribution mechanism is there because they've got doctors and these people that can actually be the vehicle for it. So I don't think we can blame them from a business sense for creating an opportunity like this. The sad thing is we're now getting a taste of our own medicine, so to speak, that we've been wanting to take away the problems quickly. Yeah. Now we've been given the answer, and now we're blaming everybody for now giving us problems. But the reality is, are we prepared to take the time that's required to heal ourselves on a natural, nurturing basis?
I like it. I like what you said.
I think it's good.
Yeah, I think you're right, Kim, and that's the question that people need to start asking is, are we prepared to take the time? Are we prepared to change our diets? And there are some people that aren't prepared to change their diets. And we've been in New Zealand and I went with my dad, and my dad has gout, and his short-term memory is not as great as and it's only when he's tired, it seems his short-term memory is not good. And he forgets to do things, like he may forget to take the coconut oil I've asked him to take, or, come up to the Sunshine Coast and buy the good quality foods that I've been talking about. And I go into his fridge and there's, as he calls it, Auntie Sarah, which is Sara Lee cakes, He says, Auntie Sarah gives me dessert, Cindy. And I went, Dad, that's Sara Lee. Oh, my gosh, he drives me insane. But anyway, being with him for 10 days, it was really interesting, because he was in pain, and I had 10 days with him. And I thought, well, if you're not prepared to change your diet, Dad, then you're going to need medication. So I actually ended up going to a doctor who happened to be an amazing specialist on gout. I just loved her. I learned so much about gout. And she just said to me, look, Cindy, I can understand that you're a nutritionist and this is where you want your father to go, but he's not prepared to do it. And if he's not prepared to do it, then we have ways to help him. And so we went through the medication schedule that he would need to be on. And I realized that, and he is 86 and it's his first lot of medication. So he's not doing too bad. But I realized there is a point when medication is necessary. And there are people that medication is for. And there are people, even in their 20s, that do not want to change their lifestyle, do not want to do anything differently. And so the consequences are that you'll need to be on medications because this is the best thing that we can do for you, because you're not prepared to do that. So it's horses for courses, I think. And another really funny thing is that I went to my aunt's in not Palmerston North. No, she was in Hamilton. And she sat down to breakfast and she had a little pink pill that was shaped like a heart, which I thought, oh, how cute's that? I didn't know what it was. But it was a pink pill shaped like a heart. And then she had a white pill and half another white pill. And I said to her, Auntie Colleen, what are they for? And she said, that's my cholesterol tablet. And I went, oh, of course, a pink heart. And the other one's for my blood pressure.
I thought you were going to say Viagra or something.
No.
I was a bit scared then for a minute.
No, it was for a blood pressure. And I said, Auntie Colleen, has your doctor looked at the latest research on females and cholesterol lowering tablets? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, why don't you ask her? Why don't you ask her about how efficient these are for women? In actual fact, there is no evidence that shows that it helps you live longer in females. And she didn't know that. So she's going to ask her doctor next time, will this make me live longer? Because that's the purpose of the medication, is to make you live longer.
And not just live longer, but live longer.
Live well.
With quality of life, yeah.
It was interesting. We were on the camper van, Kaz, and I got, honestly, darling, I thought of you so many times, how you wouldn't have coped with 5 people in a camper van. And, my children are basically young adults now and everything. Now, isn't it interesting? My brother and his gorgeous fiance, she's a physio. And then there was Jacob, obviously 15, and Taylor nearly 17, and then me, and Danny joined us once we got to Tauranga. But what was fascinating is everybody got sick except me. Oh. I'm just saying. And they were hilarious. And so every day I'd have my little green shot. So when I went away, I took with me Cindy's Camu, the green powder, and the probiotics, and I just mixed it all into one container because I didn't want to take all the 3 different things. So I didn't have the colloidal minerals with me, but I had those 3. And every day I'd do my little green shot and I'd ask everybody if they wanted one. Now, my 2 kids they would have it, but they wouldn't ask for it. They'd only have it if I got it out for them. But Taylor, I felt, we were all in close proximity and there was coughing and stuff like that. And I just thought, and there was a place in Arrowtown that sold this beautiful tincture that was Manuka honey and, Manuka honey, lemon, and blackcurrant. So it was these extracts and it was a liquid. And what you could do with it is you could add it to hot water or you could add it to sparkling water. Either way, it was seen as a medicinal drink, but you could drink it like a social drink and it tasted amazing. Anyway, so I offered everybody that. No one was interested. So no one wanted my drink. Anyway, and then when I noticed I started getting a sore throat, my glands went up. I got my teaspoon of Manuka honey, the real high UHF factor, the real UMF factor, which is called the unique Manuka factor. It's the highest medicinal antimicrobial content of the Manuka honey. And then I put a chopped clove of garlic. And I tell you, everyone couldn't believe it. Well, everyone then when we got to the wedding was all going, "What are you having?" And I've now had friends from because there were some visitors from South Africa. They're now texting me, and I even had my sister today texting me going, "Does that Manuka honey and garlic really work? Because I've got a sore throat." And I just thought it was really cool rather than lecturing everybody. It was just doing it by example. And, they were all going, "Oh, yeah, you're the healthy one, though." And I thought it was really fascinating that you're kind of almost not put down, but taken the mickey of for being the one that does all these little herbs and tinctures and my little, and I put my oils on an immune boost. And I just made sure I did not get their bugs. But fascinating, Jacob kept wanting to blame Taylor for giving him her bugs. And whereas I was trying to reframe it for him and say, "Honey, the bugs are there always. It's whether or not your immune system is ready or not to combat it." Now, fascinating, both my kids ate a truckload of sugar when we were on this trip. I let it go. I just let them go. Whatever they wanted to eat, they ate. And they had the thing for these cookie times, which I'm telling you are so shocking it's bad. But anyway, they would have probably at least one every 2 days, if not every day. And they would have had more if they could. But I just tried to turn around to them and I said it was the cookies. I said it was the cookies that made you sick. No. But, too much sugar. Too much sugar does not work for an immune system. And I really tried to explain that. So sorry if I've digressed.
No, I think it's you haven't digressed at all, because I think it's that paradigm that people believe it's the bug that makes them sick, but it's their immune system not able to fight the bug that makes them sick. And that's the paradigm shift that we need to make, is that it's not so, we are 90% bugs and 10% human. And as long as they are working in harmony and there's not too many, of the bad bugs, and there's always going to be bad bugs. There's Candida. There's, other bugs that will rise up and will make you sick. But as long as you're eating well and your digestive system's working well and your immune system's strong, one person can get a cold, be affected by the same person. One can get a cold, but the other won't, because one immune system is strong, as yours was, Kim, and the other person's isn't. And I think with those superbugs that are happening at the moment, we have to be really diligent in keeping our immune system strong, because there are antibiotic resistant superbugs. So how are we going to fight them? Do we try and find another drug, or do we strengthen the immune system in order to do that? You always look after yourself, Kim. You do all the right things. You eat right. You do work hard, I must admit. And you probably need to, she works for anybody who's listening. Kim's up 3 a.m., 4 a.m. working, and you work, you do work.
And I think my sleep, when I'm lacking in sleep, and I know, Kaz, you and I have talked about this, about when we don't get enough sleep, that we don't feel our best. I want to ask you both a question. I want to ask you, Karen, what was your upbringing and philosophy around drugs and medications, and what was your beliefs as you grew up around the pill and all of that sort of stuff? How did you come to conclusions, and what did you decide?
Well, I think I was probably more of the typical Australian, actually, where we were just blissfully unaware. If we had a headache, we'd take a Panadol. The only thing that we didn't like was Nurofen when it came out. because there were reports about, that Nurofen wasn't so good for you. We didn't really understand why, but we just sort of took that as gospel and didn't get Nurofen. And then when it came time for going on the pill, I actually went and did that myself. I didn't want to actually tell anybody because I was so embarrassed.
Because you were so young?
So I went, no, what was I? I was 18. Thanks very much, Yatasha. But I actually went and told the doctor that I wanted to go on the pill because I had acne. And at the time, I had dreadful acne. And I was drinking 3 or 4 glasses of fresh orange juice a day. And unfortunately, that just came out of my skin in zits and pimples. So as soon as I stopped drinking all that orange juice, my skin cleared up. I don't know if there was necessarily a correlation between those two. I'm not sure. But I went to the doctor and said, I need to take the pill to clear up my skin. And he said, yeah, sure. We'll just try you on all these different brands and see how you go. And it's hilarious because now those brands have actually been taken off the market because of all the damage that they've done to women. There was one Diane, there was another one Tricola and Triphasal.
Yeah, Triphasal, gosh.
And Natasha, there was another one. They just kept on trying all these different pills with me, not because they didn't work. I mean, obviously they were working. I wasn't falling pregnant. But they just wanted to try all these different pills. Each time I'd go back in for a new prescription, they'd say, hey, do you want to try this one? It's got this side effect and that side effect, but less of this and less of that. I'd be, yeah, sure, why not? If you say I should, then I will. If you think it's safe, then I'll believe you.
Karen, were you ever taught about your cycle, when you would ovulate, when you could get pregnant, when you couldn't get pregnant? Were you ever taught that?
Yes. My mum was very open about all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I did.
Yeah, you were. Because a lot of women aren't. A lot of young girls think that it's all the times of the month that they can get pregnant. They don't understand their cycle. And I think that that's the sad part of the matter. There's a wonderful book out called The Red Tent, and it talks about the cycles of the moon and how we are in sync with the cycles of the moon and how women, back in the biblical times, all got their periods together. And I think we've lost that connection with our bodies, and even men should, I believe, know how this works. And people don't know anymore because we've been able to manipulate our bodies with drugs. And we've lost the understanding of the function of our body and how it works. And we believe that it's okay at 16 to take the pill and that life will be sweet. And I really feel for a lot of these young girls that are not taught the right thing about the pill, the side effects the pill has, the amount of PCOS, endometriosis, PCOS being polycystic ovarian syndrome, the amount of endometriosis, inflammatory diseases, or inflammatory pelvic diseases that we're now seeing. And, if any mothers are listening to this, I believe it is our duty to teach our young girls our cycles and the understanding of our cycles. There's a beautiful naturopath by the name of Francesca Naish who has a wonderful book out, and I can't remember the name of the book at the moment, but she's an Australian naturopath, and she has written one of the best books on the knowledge of our cycles, the moon, when we ovulate, how our birth, where the moon was on our birth, has something to do with the double ovulation in a month, and giving girls this power and empowering them and our boys, the understanding of this, I actually believe is where we need to start going. And for the person who asked this question on our Facebook page, this is where I would be going, is I would be getting a book that teaches you about your cycles. And if you're a woman that's now going through menopause, there are a lot of fabulous books out there on menopause and naturally dealing with it. And so many of my friends who are going through menopause at the moment are going on hormones.
It's funny because I went to the doctor. I haven't been sleeping as well as I should, and I have had a few headaches and things, and just assumed I had a brain tumor or something. But anyway, I got very dramatic with the whole thing. Anyway, I went along.
Bless your little heart.
I know. So I had a blood test before I went away. Went on the holiday and thought, no, I just need a holiday. And then the holiday wasn't restful. It was like full on. It was a zoom tour of New Zealand and the Griswolds on holiday. But but what was amazing is when I came back, I sat with my doctor, and she's very open, but she's still very orthodox and very, very pragmatic, and bases all of her knowledge on evidence-based science. So she likes all the evidence, which I appreciate, but I also feel that there's evidence for all sides, and I feel like the more I'm learning through Cindy saying that a lot of our natural therapies don't have evidence-based science, not because it's not there or it's not wanted, it's just it's non-affordable. So I kind of always try and keep an open eye with it all. Anyway, she sat there and she said to me, now, Kim, have you what sort of symptoms have you had? And I said, well, I'm just not sleeping that well. And I must admit, people are really irritating me at the moment. And then she goes, and I said, and it does seem to be warmer, even though people are saying that it's cooler. And she's smiling. And then I said, and I have been having these headaches, and I am a bit concerned I might need a scan because, I'm thinking the worst. And she looked at me and put her hand on me, and she goes, sweetheart, your FSH levels are showing that you are going through the change. And I went, oh, well, if that's the case, first of all, I was a bit shocked, and in my high-pitched voice thought that's only for old people, not 47-year-olds. Anyway, she turned around and she said to me, trust me, menopause can start from 35. Anyway, then she turns around and she goes, but listen, look, based on my client's philosophy is how I treat it. So if you're someone who really is drug-orientated or would like to know that there's drugs and medicine, then I'm going to give you this thing. But I know your philosophy, Kim, and I'm going to share with you some of the things that you can do from your point of view. And I really appreciated that. But she said, there is medicine to help you if you want to go down the medical route. But then I said, well, considering I've gone through this relatively unscathed, really. And then she goes quiet and she goes, have you asked your family that question, Kim? And I thought, oh, have you asked the people that you work with that question, Kim? And I thought, it's such a big thing. But why I brought that up was I was really interested in how she approached, we've got medicine for it, but there's also alternative routes. And I think that's the sort of doctor I want to be in conversation with, because I also, like you, Cindy, love to learn, like that doctor all about the gout. But Karen, back to that now, and I want to ask a personal question. If it's too personal, then just say, and I should have, if I could have texted you this, I would, but do you think
now it's going out to the world?
Don't lie. Don't lie.
Do you think, my darling, the fact that you haven't had children, do you think any of that has had anything to do with what you went through as a young woman, or was it what's your thoughts around that?
Well, in what context do you mean? Explain what you mean.
Did you have children? Did you choose not to have children, or could you not have children? Is the first question that I'd ask, and then the second question is what was behind that, or is there? I know you've got a bigger picture around it. I'm just trying to help people that would have a similar question if they were in the same place. And I just love your thoughts.
Well, it's interesting because I was on the pill from such a young age through to about 32, or 30. 2001. Yeah, so I was about 30. But in my case, I did actually fall pregnant a couple of times. So I was able to fall pregnant when I was a bit younger. And the first time that I fell pregnant, I miscarried. And then the second time that I fell pregnant was when Greg died. So I miscarried just before his funeral. And then when Matt and I tried to fall pregnant, we weren't able to. We had all sorts of dramas and palavers, and I ended up having, my ovaries removed and cysts and things. So, it's a hard one to answer because obviously I was capable of falling pregnant. Whether what my body was going through meant that I couldn't carry. That's questionable. I mean, I think certainly around Greg's death, that makes perfect sense to me, that I was incapable of carrying a baby.
Mm.
But when I was younger and I'd fallen pregnant, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Mm.
And I think at the time when I fell pregnant when I was younger, it didn't concern me that much because I was much younger. So it wasn't the end of the world, because in my mind I thought, okay, well, it's very sad. And I was probably a bit sad for a couple of months, but then I got over it. And I thought, well, I'm really young. I can still have kids if I decide to have kids. So it never occurred to me that I would never be able to fall pregnant until Matt and I tried. We tried for about 4 years without any joy. But, of course, there was a medical explanation for that in the end. So,
I think what's important really, and I think for our listeners, I really, one of the hardest things, the more knowledge you get, the more guilty you can feel, or the more bad you feel about what you've done or choices you've made in the past, or maybe you can blame yourself for making decisions without the knowledge. Or, I do talk to a lot of women that struggle to fall pregnant and they blame it on taking the pill or losing their father or going through traumatic experiences or eating badly. And look, I think this is where I love your philosophy, Karen, that there is a greater purpose, a greater meaning, and behind all of this. And why is it some children can be vaccinated and appear to be absolutely fine, and someone else can pass away within the next 24 hours? Why does a 2-year-old end up with leukemia and a 90-year-old that smoked and drank all their life lead quite a fairly okay life, healthy life? So,
and the same with the pill. Why can somebody
come off it after being on it for 15 years
get pregnant straight away, and others struggle? So, yeah, good point.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure that, or is it your body, your physicality, your chemistry at that time, it's not working, or it is working? I don't know. I'm really questioning the whole medication side of things at the moment.
Well, I think that it is not black and white. And so if you get a drug and you read the side effects, there'll be the common side effects and the rare side effects. But it's like pages sometimes when you read it, because when they do tests on drugs, the side effects are so variable for everybody, or for the test cases that they do, that they have to write everything down. And that's the thing. It's not a exact science. It's actually a very unexact science. Although in saying that, I'm in awe of some of the drugs out there and what they can do, such as if someone's in a lot of pain and that gets rid of their pain, or if they're inflamed and it can pull the inflammation down. So I'm not saying that they're all bad. I think there is some good in them as well. So it's not an exact science. And the other thing that I came across actually today, which was really interesting, is that there's a new article out about cholesterol and if it's good or bad. So a couple of months ago, there was this whole thing saying, cholesterol is good, eat whatever foods you want in cholesterol. And now today a new article's come out, and 3 peer-reviewed scientists and physicians that you would really trust in what they're doing. And they're not silly in any stretch of the imagination. And I'm reading the article and I'm like going, where are these guys coming from when we know that cholesterol is important for the brain, it's important for vitamin D, it's important for cortisone and hormones and things like that. So I decided to go and study the 3 guys and just look at their what they've researched, what they do, and what was really interesting. And you're going to love this one, Karen.
Yeah, I'm sitting here with bated breath on the edge of my seat, actually.
You're going to love this one. The cholesterol is in the animal kingdom, not in the plant kingdom. The 3 of them are vegans. They're animal activists. They're about humane rights for animals. They don't like animal testing in research. And so their whole philosophy about life slants them to the research that's going to prove that they're right.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting, because as I'm reading about them, I'm like going, well, these guys should know what they're talking about. And, you know, and they've got so many articles and they're this and they're that. And then I went, I got to look deeper. Like, I'm really learning to look deeper with the people that are saying these things, because we know that cholesterol is very important for life. And, yes, you can make your own cholesterol. That's, you know, we make our own cholesterol, but it's also important, that we do consume it, because it's part of, a whole bunch of other foods that are important. So it's not just one thing, but it's got other foods that are in it, such as it might have omega-3, or it could have a protein involved, or something like that. So yeah, it was really, really interesting as I started to unfold who these were as human beings. And the same with people who are researching down the barrel of a microscope, and they're looking at one pathway in the human body, and they're going, my gosh, this pathway has something here. If I can stop that pathway, then I'm going to stop inflammation. But what they're not looking at is that's one pathway in the human body. There could be another 50 pathways that require that exact drug or whatever it is, or that exact nutrient or that enzyme or that process or that biochemical pathway, in order for other things to work in the body. And that's how side effects come about, is because it may affect one biochemical pathway in one human being, but it may not in another. And we can go further on this with the whole vaccination issue. Why is it that some people seem to come out unscathed from vaccine, and other people, like you said, Kim, like a girlfriend of ours, her baby was dead within 24 hours after a vaccine. And she saw the immediate effect as she took her baby away from the doctor, and how sick he got. And then he woke up. Well, he didn't wake up the next morning. He had died. So I love the explanation that Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride says, is that she says that sometimes the child is really vulnerable because of other consequences that have happened in their lives. And then you give them the vaccine, and it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's not necessarily the vaccine, but it's that whole, you know, gamut of things that have happened in order to get to that point. And when you have a look at the fury in the debate on vaccination, it's actually really scary. And I don't know why we've got this fury, when all we have to do is really look at the facts and realize that perhaps we need testing before we vaccinate. And perhaps if we are going to vaccinate, we vaccinate with one bug only, not 3 as is in the MMR, or, you know, they seem to be giving a whole bunch of ones together. So, you know, and that's what Natasha goes through with. She just says, it's not the only thing. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back. So that could be also when Panadol causes a problem, which it does. Panadol can cause problems with people. And is that the straw that breaks the camel's back? It wouldn't affect one person, but it affects the next. So.
Well, it's a bit like my doctor also turned around and said how, you know, we've all got teenagers. She's similar to mine. She's even at my school. And she just said that one of the pupil at a same age as our children has been hospitalised due to smoking marijuana at a party on the weekend. Now, we know some people can smoke marijuana and be absolutely fine. Someone else can have, you know, a couple of puffs on it and they're really sick or not well for 6, 8, 10 weeks. And I think the same can be said for food. Why do some people eat peanuts and someone else can die from an anaphylactic shock with peanuts? And I think everything has to be looked at independently. And I think the whole question that's been raised here is our thoughts around drugs, vaccination, the pill, our philosophies and all of that. Sometimes, girls, I think ignorance is bliss.
But you know what I would say about that, and I think we've said this a couple of times too, is that it doesn't matter what your view is. You can always find information that's well substantiated and confirm it. So, you know, for people who have a view that vaccination is the way to go, they'll be able to find evidence that they're, and people who think that it's not the go, they'll find evidence that they're right. You know, you look at even just from all the different diets that are around. You know, people can find evidence about the different diets and why their diet is the best diet. And then the sad part about that is that we go to war for our viewpoint as opposed to being accepting of not somebody else's choice, but being accepting of choice in and of itself. So I think, you know, even if you just look at, let's just say for argument's sake, you know, the paleo versus vegan thing, I'm not going to try and convince somebody else to be vegan because that then would be trying to remove their choice. So I'm more for choice than what I am for their choice of paleo. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I'm with you, Karen.
I think that's where we fall down as a culture and as we fall down as humanity, is that we're not focused on freedom. What we're focused on is my way or the highway, and there is no other way. And if you choose another way, I'm going to belittle you and run you down and you know, make a big shindig out of it. And, you know, especially here in Australia with what they're doing right now, you know, proposing to do around vaccination. I just find it all just a little bit misguided, because there's, you know, people have a right to freedom. We have a right to choose, and I'm not concerned in what area that is, whether it's a political preference or a religious preference or it's a diet preference or it's a, you know, a cultural preference. People have the right to choose.
You know, when I was on stage with Pete Evans, yes, that's right, let me say that again. You know, he asked me in Auckland, he pulled me up on the stage and he said, so Kim, you know, and he introduced me beautifully. He said, so tell us why you're here. Give us your story. And I walked over to him. I put my hands all over him, all over his chest. And I said, I'm here to do what every woman in this audience is dying to do. I'm just saying. Anyway, but at the but what I
can so see you doing that.
But what was so cool and what I love about him, and if you actually, anybody that knocks him or doesn't believe in him, if you really look at, if you go and take the trouble to listen to him, he's not saying you must do paleo. He is saying, here is a way that our forefathers and foremothers survived. I'm really looking into how I feel when I eat this way. I've done all the pubs and the fast food and the high carb and all the alcohol. I've done all that, and this didn't work for me. And now I see clarity and I have such purpose and I feel amazing. And I have the power of being a well-known chef to educate people, to give them this choice, which is exactly what you're saying. And I want to bring up another point around that. I talked about what I believe the philosophy of paleo is. And to be honest with you, my ignorance around it was I thought it was basically eating a whole lot of carcasses with a little bit of green and a couple of berries thrown in. And hence why I kind of never thought myself as paleo. But when I looked at the philosophy of paleo, we are actually all paleo, you included, Karen. And it is an honouring of the planet and the animals, the plants and the kingdom in it. But whilst you may not be the part where you eat meat, Karen, you certainly are the other parts, good fats, lots of greens, and certainly chemical free as possible and all of that sort of thing. So there's only one area of paleo that you're not paleo, but the reality is the philosophy of paleo. You are paleo. And anyway, I said all this on my latest newsletter, and I had a lady write to me and she said, I just wanted to point out to you, I do follow you, I do agree with a lot of what you say, but I don't agree with this. And I went to a talk with another Sunshine Coast well-known person on the coast here, and a well-known doctor spoke at that, and this doctor said that, in fact, paleo is dangerous and you should stay away from it. And anyway, and she said, I just thought you should know, and I think it's important that you're very careful with what you say. And anyway, so I really valued that. And funnily enough, I didn't get any charge around it, which I, you know, in the past I have maybe when someone's criticized or given me a critique on something and felt hurt, or I didn't feel any of that. And I just wrote back and I said, look, thank you so much for caring and taking the time to write to me with that, because I really appreciate that people are saying those things. But if you really look at what my newsletter was about, it was around the philosophy. And I don't mind whether it's paleo, vegan, macrobiotic, breatharian, whatever it is. If the philosophy sits with you, your body, your family, and your beliefs, then surely if it's out of respect for your body, your family, the environment, the community, and the planet, then I think that's what's important, which is what's led me to this point is at the very end of our paleo talk, with Pete Evans, all of us are on stage, and Cindy, you had the same thing when all the speakers were brought out on stage. There was a question and answer, and one of the questions was a lady who was really concerned about her daughter, who's a vegetarian, 16, and will not change her values and beliefs. And she said, but now I'm listening to you and all the importance of the minerals, the vitamins, the fats, the collagen, all the things that everyone was talking about with paleo. She's worried that her daughter is not going to get those same things. And we all directed and we all looked straight to Nora Gedgaudas, who was on stage, and she's so amazing. Anyway, she turned around and didn't just give a simple answer, which I think brings us back to the beginning of what you're about, Cindy, is that going deeper and deeper. It's not just a superficial yes, no answer or black, white. And Nora said, I want to tell you this. Being vegetarian and a teenager is probably one of the most harmful things you could be doing to your body. And she didn't say it from a values point of view. She said it from a clinical and Cindy, I might need your help here, but she went right down into the matrix of the cells and how they're formed and how they communicate and what those animal proteins do in the body that no other thing on the planet can do for a woman in her teens and a man in their teens, and just how, and she gave it very scientifically, and forgive me, listeners, I have no idea how she even spoke. It's just incredible being around these academics and these people that have such knowledge. But the way she delivered it also made a lot of sense. And what it made me realize is I really honor that. And I turned around and then I added my tuppence worth and I said, look, I will never be able to explain to my beautiful 16-year-old daughter why I think animal proteins are important. However, what I would say as a mum of a 16-year-old girl is that it's important for us as mums to do our research and to find people that give us unbiased and well-researched information, perhaps on both sides, so that then our children can make good decisions. But more importantly, that we live by example, that if we go, oh, well, the pill will be fine to help you with your acne, then I would suggest that as a mum, we haven't done enough research nowadays. There is enough information and avenues to get that information to actually discover that the pill may not be the only thing or is the right thing to do. And in fact, eating 4 glasses of orange juice a day could be a situation that causes acne. I'm not saying it is, like you said, Karen, but, there could be something a lot deeper than this. And I think really the point of this podcast really and truly is that we don't even think that we've got all the right answers by any stretch of the imagination. But I think what we do and what we totally enjoy with one another, even on conversing, and this is exactly how we talk when we're off the podcast, but it's about that going deeper. And then when one of us makes a comment that triggers something, the other one will go and research it or wants to find out more. And I think if you can find yourself a tribe of people that will give you information that then sits with you as to whether you'll take the pill or not take the pill, this is the reason why. And if you really look at the pill, for most of us, the pill is there because it's so damned easy. You don't have to think, you don't have to worry about it, and you can maybe go and sleep with as many people as you like or don't like. You're not going to fall pregnant ultimately. But then if you take it a deeper level again, now you've taken away your body's innate intelligence to ovulate when it's meant to in accordance with the moon and the cycles and all of those things. Go another deeper level again. If you weren't on the pill, would you sleep that easily with somebody? And then go another level again when I listen to my beautiful mother-in-law talk like this. And as a woman, when we're allowing men to enter us, and I hope I'm not going too graphic here, but what I'm trying to say on a spiritual level is you're allowing someone into you. Would you allow that as easily, knowing you wouldn't fall pregnant? And therefore, what is the deeper connection here around why we're actually having sex? And I don't know if I've even said that in the right way.
No, you said it beautifully, Kim.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I can't agree with you more. I think you said it eloquently, and it is something that we're not questioning, and we're not teaching our young girls. And, no, I think that should be just clipped and repeated to young girls all over the world. That's beautifully said.
And I think the thing is too is actually knowing that questioning is an option. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, interestingly enough, about, their own upbringing and the way that they are and have been. And this particular girl, she's 30-something, early 30s. And to this day, she's never realised that she was able to question anything. Able to question her parents' beliefs, able to question her own beliefs, able to question what's possible, able to question what she does, able to actually be a creator in her own life, as opposed to being somebody who has life afflicted upon them because of, what people believe to be the right thing, and fitting in and looking for love and acceptance and making sure that we don't rock the boat, and everybody does it this way, so I'm going to do it that way too. And of course that's the way that we go. Why would you question that? What else is there? Of course we're only going to go down the one path. So I think that a lot of people in today's society, and it's certainly my hope for people, is that they do actually, listen to this show and realize that everything is up for question. Everything, even their name, is up for question. Nothing is a fait accompli. Nothing is a necessitated way of being or a necessitated action to take. Everybody's got freedom, but I think that we see ourselves as relatively trapped because everybody around us has been relatively trapped. So we think that, we can't, we've got to go to the doctor because that's what everybody does, or we've got to go on the pill because that's what you do, like, who wants to use condoms? Like, that's so gross.
I think, sorry, yeah. Darling, I think you're absolutely right. I just think, what I love about going to see my doctor or a naturopath or a chiropractor or an osteopath or an acupuncturist, anybody, I think, and I'm so grateful for this, and I'm very grateful to you girls for teaching me even more, is also if there's any emotional charge, or I get a funny feeling in my tummy or anything, that I don't have to make a decision there and then. I can sleep on it for 24 hours, or I can go back to the doctor in a week when I've had time to digest what they've said, and or I can go and ask 3 other therapists or specialists what their beliefs are, so that I gather enough information for me to make the decision that then I feel good about, so that in a year, 2 years, a month, days time, I'm not going to feel guilty for those decisions. And I think that's a really powerful point maybe to come to a close with, is that, what you're saying, Karen, is everything's up for question. Give yourself space and time to digest that questioning, do your own research, and then when you make a decision, that you've made it without the quick fix. I'll take a Panadol because I've got a headache, or I'm going to take the pill because I've got acne. It's more about what's causing those problems. How can I treat it? Is that a questionable thing that I can actually really give myself some time out to make those decisions in a better way? Or more importantly, what's my body saying to me what are those whispers that it's trying to say to me? And I really, you've just given me a major aha. There is no right or wrong, really, is there, Kaz? It's just
no. And I think that when I say that everything is up for question, it means just look at it, just review it, and everybody makes the best decisions that they're capable of making at the time that they make them, with the information that they have. So there's no getting it wrong in this life. All there is just experiencing. So, instead of just making a decision because that's what the norm is, I guess what we're saying, all three of us collectively, is don't consider the norm to be the norm. Create your own norm, and by, as you say, Cindy and Kim, you educate yourself. Make the best decision that you're capable of making. Just be informed and be clear on it, and and make sure that you're putting yourself at the heart of the choice. But everything is up for grabs. Everything. The colour blue. Is that blue? Who says? What I should do with my money? Who says? Should it go in the bank? Who says? Just question everything. And it doesn't mean what the norm is not right. You might still come back and say, yeah, no, actually I'm going to go with the norm. But at least you've initiated the choice as opposed to the choice being initiated for you. I think that's probably the big thing. But great conversation.
Yeah, and you know what, Karen? I actually think that we are kind of walking around like zombies, sheep, accepting what's dished out to us. And I believe no, I don't believe, I know what you say is absolutely correct. And for those people who are listening, it is to question everything. And is this right or wrong for me? And you being a vegan, me being a meat eater, Kim being a pescatarian, or is that Presbyterian?
I'm actually a PPP. I'm a triple P. I'm a pescatarian, poultarian, paleo, actually.
Oh, right.
Yes. Actually, I'm a qualitarian.
And a Tartarian.
A what?
A Tartarian. We can't forget the Tartarian.
Well, I'd say I'm a qualitarian Tartarian. I mean, I'm just saying.
I like that, a qualitarian Tartarian.
I'm a QT, a qualitarian Tartarian.
Oh, yeah.
And that means you're a cutie.
And I'm a cutie. Hello, Christmas.
Hello. I think we've come up with a new term. I think that this was what this podcast has been all about, is that, you know, we started off because we had the question on, well, should I take the pill or shouldn't I take the pill? And coming to that, medication's okay or not okay. And some of the things that we didn't discuss is Prozac and Valium and ADD and ADHD and all of these things like that. So I think, that we've only just touched the surface. I don't believe that we've really gotten into it. And I think the main thing is to research, to question, and make up your own mind about this. And maybe with the help of other people that are giving you information, but don't take it as fact. Make sure you go in and study it.
And I also had that philosophy, Kaz, of yours, what's really helped me relax as a mum. And I think anybody that listens to Up for a Chat, oh my gosh, I think we already do question. That's why we listen to Up for a Chat and we're a part of it. But I think the thing that also helps me is, and I'll give you the example, I can only say it, I have a 15-year-old son who's starting to go to parties, and, you know, he told me the other night he went to a party and he watched people doing drugs and I'm sitting there going, I don't want my children to go to parties. I don't want them to have to even question going on the pill. I don't want them doing that. I don't want them, I want my babies back, you know, and I did this whole thing in my head and I thought, you know what? Their lives are already, I'm not saying this is true, this is just truth for me. Their lives are mapped out. And in fact, one thing that my beautiful doctor turned around to me and she said, you know what, love? All we can do is give them and constantly teach to them our values. You have to know that your children will go out and make their own decisions, their own choices, and you just hope that they've had enough questioning values for themselves that a solid, good parenting gives them, which is truckloads of love, the best that you can possibly be, honouring the fact that you're up for questioning yourself every 5 seconds. I mean, every time they tell me I'm an idiot, I agree with them because 5 minutes ago I was an idiot and now I'm not. But anyway, you know, tomorrow I will be another idiot, but it's okay. But I just have to trust that the map for them is already in place, that hopefully my values as a human being about being kind to the planet, myself and my fellow human beings is actually what will come through. And I have to trust that if my child takes a drug, you know, through a moment of whatever it is, we don't know. I don't know what they're going to do when I'm not around, but I have to trust that whatever's going to happen out of those consequences are there for all of our teachings and learnings, no matter what. And I'm not saying that lightly by any means. I pray to God every day that my children will make good decisions, but I don't know. There's moments of insanity when we don't.
Yeah, look, there are those moments, but I think if you bring up your children with the knowledge that they have strength inside them and they have the knowledge and the ability to heal, the ability to come up with the answers to life's questions, that it's within, it's not without. So many times we're told, oh, you have a pain, here, take a Panadol, it'll make you feel better. Oh, you have an infection, here, take an antibiotic, that will get you better. Here, you have ADD, here, have Ritalin, that'll make you better. So it's always the outside external forces that are meant to make you feel better. But in actual fact, and you will agree with this, I know, Karen, it's our internal forces that can only make us feel better. It's about who we are as human beings and how we teach our children that is their inner strength and their inner knowledge and their innateness that in actual fact will get them through pain physically, mentally and emotionally. And that's what I always taught my children, is that and that's why I never gave them medications. Unless it was a life-threatening situation, I would be there in a flash. But for everyday pain and for everyday things, I always made sure that they did it for them and by themselves as opposed to having outside forces to make them better.
Yeah.
And I know that giving them that when they were told maybe at 16, 17 that here, this little white pill, and it could be ice or marijuana or whatever it is, this little white pill will make you feel better. They knew that it wouldn't because they know what makes them feel better is what comes from internally, not externally.
Magic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Well, that's been a fabulous conversation, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, very. Well, hopefully everybody who's been listening to the show has loved it as much as we've loved delivering it for you. So we want to hear about your thoughts and your experiences. What was it like growing up for you when you were a child? You know, what was it like in your household back in the olden days? What did your grandparents feel about drugs and pharmaceuticals, and what do you think about them now? Hit us with it. Tell us everything. Go to our Facebook page at allthews.facebook.com/up for a chat. And you can also post on allthews.thewellnesscouch.com/up for a chat. And we absolutely love hearing from you. So don't hold back. Hit us with your thoughts. And if you've got any ideas or if you've got any questions that you want us to answer for you, now is a really good time to jump onto our Facebook page and send us a message and let us know what you'd like us to cover. Because we love to be able to respond to what you want to hear. So Kayla, thank you so much for your message through to our Facebook page. We hope that you got everything that you wanted out of today's show. So join us here next week on Up for a Chat and become part of the ripple effect that's changing the world. We love having you on the ride.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.